The sound of gunfire cut through the silent dawn as Abigail Vance stood frozen by the window, her trembling fingers clutching the frayed curtains. It had been 3 days since she had buried her father, and the echoes of the funeral still haunted her every waking moment. The small ranch house that had once felt so safe now seemed hollow, every creak and groan of the wooden floors a reminder that she was alone in the vastness of the Montana Territory. The year was 1878, and the harshness of frontier life had claimed one more victim. Henry Vance had been a good man, a hard-working rancher who had built something from nothing after moving west following the war between the states. But pneumonia cared nothing for character or dreams, and it had taken him swiftly, leaving Abigail to shoulder the burden of their struggling cattle operation. Outside, the gunshots continued, closer now, pulling her from her thoughts. Abigail grabbed her father's Winchester rifle from above the mantel and moved cautiously to the door. At 22, she was no stranger to firearms or trouble, but facing either alone was a prospect she had never imagined. "Who's there?" she called out, her voice steadier than she felt. "Miss Vance," a man's voice responded, strained and urgent. "It's Mitchell Zachariah from the Double Cross. I've got rustlers on my tail." Abigail hesitated only a moment before pulling open the door. She knew Mitchell by reputation, a competent cowhand who worked for the neighboring ranch, but they had exchanged no more than pleasantries at town gatherings. Now he was stumbling toward her porch, clutching his side, his chestnut horse nervously pawing the ground behind him. "Get in," she commanded, helping him through the doorway before closing and bolting it behind them. "You're bleeding." "Just a graze," Mitchell assured her, though his grimace belied his words. His tall frame seemed to fill the small front room, and despite his obvious pain, there was something reassuring about his presence. "I'm sorry to bring trouble to your door, Miss Vance. I know about your father's passing, and I wouldn't have come if I had anywhere else to go." Abigail set the rifle down and moved to examine his wound. "Let me see that, and it's just Abigail." Mitchell removed his hand from his side, revealing a bloody tear in his shirt. As she helped him to a chair and began gathering supplies to clean the wound, she studied him more closely. His face was weathered from years under the sun, but he couldn't be much older than her mid-20s. His dark hair curled beneath the brim of his hat, and despite the circumstances, there was a gentleness in his eyes that didn't match the rugged exterior. "What happened?" she asked, dampening a cloth to clean the blood from his skin. He winced as she began working. "Caught 3 men trying to drive off a dozen head of Mr. Thompson's cattle. I managed to scare them off, but not before one of them left his mark." He gestured to his side. "I think they've gone, but I can't be certain." Abigail nodded, focused on her task. "The wound isn't deep. You're fortunate." "I know it," he agreed. "Though I'm not sure your father would consider me bringing outlaws to his daughter's doorstep particularly lucky." A shadow crossed her face. "My father isn't here to worry about that anymore." Mitchell fell silent, watching her work. Finally, he said softly, "I'm truly sorry about your loss, Abigail. Your father was well respected in these parts." "Thank you," she replied automatically, the words feeling hollow after having repeated them countless times at the funeral. She finished bandaging his side and stood back. "You should rest. I'll keep watch for those rustlers." Mitchell shook his head, carefully pulling his shirt back down. "That's not right. I've already imposed enough." "I wasn't planning on sleeping anyway," she admitted. "I haven't been able to, not since." Understanding crossed his face. Since the funeral, Abigail nodded, turning away to hide the unexpected surge of emotion. She had held herself together through the service, through the condolences and the practical matters that followed. But night after night, sleep eluded her, leaving her alone with memories and uncertainties. Mitchell rose from the chair with careful movements. "Then I'll keep watch till morning," he said simply. "You should try to rest." Their eyes met, and something passed between them, an understanding, perhaps, or the recognition of shared solitude. For the first time since her father's passing, Abigail didn't feel entirely alone. "I'll make some coffee," she said instead of arguing. "If we're both staying up, we might as well be alert." As the coffee brewed on the wood stove, an uneasy quiet settled over the cabin. Mitchell moved to the window, peering out into the darkness, his hand resting on the revolver at his hip. "How long have you been at the Double Cross?" Abigail asked, needing to fill the silence. "About 3 years," he answered, still watching the darkness outside. "Came up from Texas with the cattle drive and decided to stay on. Mr. Thompson's a fair boss, and Montana has a way of getting under your skin." "It does," she agreed, pouring the coffee into 2 cups, "though it hasn't been kind lately." Mitchell accepted the cup she offered. "I heard you've been running the ranch mostly on your own these past months, even before your father took ill." She was surprised he knew this. "Word travels fast. It's a small community," he replied with a slight smile, "and people notice strength when they see it." Abigail felt warmth creep into her cheeks that had nothing to do with the steaming coffee. It wasn't strength, it was necessity. Father's heart wasn't what it used to be, and someone had to manage things. "That's usually how strength works," Mitchell said, "born of necessity, not choice." Outside, a coyote howled in the distance, the sound mournful and piercing. Abigail shivered involuntarily. "Cold?" Mitchell asked. "No," she said. "It's just, everything sounds different now, lonelier." He nodded in understanding. "I lost my mother when I was 16. Pa followed 2 years later. I remember that feeling like the world had suddenly grown larger and emptier all at once." Abigail looked at him with new interest. "What did you do?" "The only thing I could," he shrugged, kept moving forward. "Worked the ranch until there was nothing left to save, then started riding with the herds. Found purpose in the work, in being useful." He paused. "What will you do with this place?" The question had been hovering in her mind since her father's last breath, but hearing it spoken aloud made it more real, more urgent. "I don't know," she admitted. "The bank holds notes on part of the property. We lost nearly half the herd last winter. Father had plans to rebuild, but now—" She trailed off. "You could sell," Mitchell suggested, though his tone suggested he knew it wasn't what she wanted to hear. "This land is all I have left of him," she said. "Of my mother too, though I barely remember her. I'm not ready to let it go." Mitchell returned to the window, his stance alert. "Then you'll need help. Running a cattle operation isn't a one-person job, not even for someone as capable as you seem to be. Are you offering?" The question slipped out before she could consider it. He turned, surprise evident on his face. "I." The sound of approaching horses interrupted whatever he might have said. Both of them tensed, Mitchell drawing his revolver and moving to extinguish the lamp. "Get down," he whispered, positioning himself by the window. Abigail retrieved her rifle and crouched behind her father's old armchair. 3 riders approached slowly, their forms barely visible in the moonlight. They stopped a short distance from the house, conversing in low voices. "That's his horse," one of them said, pointing to Mitchell's mount tethered near the porch. "He's here all right." "The Vance place," another commented. "Heard the old man died, just a girl here now. Makes it easier," the third man said with a chuckle that made Abigail's skin crawl. "We get Zachariah for interfering and maybe check what valuables the old man left behind." Mitchell's jaw tightened. 3 of them," he whispered to Abigail. "Same ones from before. They're not just rustlers, they're the Blackwater gang. They've been terrorizing ranches from here to Idaho." "What do we do?" Abigail asked, her heart pounding. "We could try to wait them out," Mitchell said, "but I don't like our odds if they decide to rush the house." Abigail thought quickly. "There's a back way out through the root cellar. It comes up near the creek bed if we could reach the sheriff." "Whitefish is too far," Mitchell shook his head. "By the time we got back, they could have burned this place to the ground out of spite." Outside, the men had dismounted and were spreading out, one heading toward the barn, the others approaching the house from different angles. "I need you to trust me," Mitchell said, his eyes finding hers in the darkness. "Can you do that?" Abigail hesitated only a moment before nodding. There was something about this man that inspired confidence, despite having known him for less than an hour. "When I give the signal, fire 2 shots through that window," he instructed, pointing to the side of the house. "Then get down and stay down. I'll handle the rest." Before she could ask what he meant by the rest, Mitchell was moving silently toward the back door. Abigail positioned herself as instructed, the rifle steady in her hands despite her fear. She heard Mitchell slip outside, and for several long minutes there was nothing but the sound of her own breathing and the occasional murmur of the outlaws as they circled the house. Then came a sharp whistle, the signal. Abigail fired twice through the window, the shots shattering the glass and the quiet night simultaneously. Shouts of surprise and anger erupted from the men outside. She dropped to the floor just as returning gunfire splintered the window frame above her head. More shots rang out, but these came from a different direction from outside the house. Mitchell had circled around behind the outlaws and now had them caught in the open. One man cried out in pain, and hurried footsteps suggested the others were scrambling for cover. "Give it up, Jensen." Mitchell called out, "The law knows your faces now. You won't make it to the territory line. You're dead, Zachariah," a voice shouted back. "You and that Vance girl both." More gunfire followed, then the sound of horses whinnying in panic. Abigail remained huddled on the floor, her father's rifle clutched to her chest, praying that Mitchell wasn't lying dead in her yard. Finally, after what seemed an eternity, she heard the thunder of hoofbeats retreating into the distance. Still, she didn't move until Mitchell's voice called from outside, "Abigail, it's clear. They're gone." She rushed to the door, relief flooding her at the sight of him standing there, a smoking revolver in his hand and his hat gone, but otherwise unharmed. "Are you all right?" They both asked simultaneously, then shared a brief, tension-breaking smile. "One of them took a bullet in the arm," Mitchell explained, coming back inside. "They decided we weren't worth the trouble, for now at least." "For now," Abigail echoed, the implication hanging between them. The Blackwater gang wouldn't forget this encounter, and they knew exactly where to find her. Mitchell seemed to read her thoughts. "They won't be back tonight, but you shouldn't stay here alone." "I don't have much choice," she replied, beginning to clean up the glass from the broken window. Mitchell watched her for a moment, then said, "I could stay. Just until morning. Keep watch." Abigail paused in her task, studying him. Logic told her that inviting a man she barely knew to spend the night in her home was improper at best, dangerous at worst. But something deeper, some instinct she couldn't name, told her Mitchell Zachariah was a man she could trust. "I would appreciate that," she said finally. I haven't been sleeping well, not since the funeral." Mitchell's expression softened. "Then it's settled. I'll keep watch till morning." "You try to get some rest." They worked together to secure the house as best they could, boarding up the broken window and checking that all other entrances were locked. Mitchell insisted on taking the chair near the front window, his revolver close at hand. Abigail retired to her room but left the door cracked open. The knowledge that someone was watching over her, keeping her safe, eased something that had been tight in her chest since her father's passing. For the first time in days, she fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. Dawn broke over the Montana landscape, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Abigail woke to the smell of coffee and the soft sounds of movement in her kitchen. For a disoriented moment, she thought her father was still alive, that the past week had been nothing but a terrible dream. Then reality settled back in, bringing with it the memory of the night before. Mitchell was still there, true to his word. He had kept watch while she slept. She dressed quickly and found him at the stove, frying eggs in her cast iron skillet. He looked up as she entered, a smile warming his features. "Good morning," he greeted her. "Hope you don't mind. Figured you could use a hot breakfast after the night we had." "I don't mind at all," she replied, surprised by how natural it felt to have him in her kitchen. "Thank you for staying." "Thank you for the trust," he returned, sliding eggs onto 2 plates. "You slept," Abigail nodded. "Better than I have in days." They ate in companionable silence, the events of the previous night creating a bond that words couldn't quite capture. When they finished, Mitchell rose reluctantly. "I should get back to the Double Cross," he said. "Mr. Thompson will be wondering what became of me, and I need to let him know about the rustlers." "Of course," Abigail agreed, though the prospect of being alone again filled her with a quiet dread. Mitchell seemed to hesitate at the door. "Abigail, about your ranch. What about it? You said you need help," he continued. "And the fact is, Mr. Thompson is selling the Double Cross. He's getting too old for the work, and his children have no interest in ranching. Most of us hands will be looking for new positions by month's end." Abigail felt her pulse quicken. "Are you offering your services, Mr. Zachariah? "I am," he confirmed, "though I can't promise I'm worth what you'd have to pay me." "After last night, I'd say your worth has been well established," she replied with a small smile. "But I need to be honest, I'm not sure how long I can keep this place going. The money from last season's drive is nearly gone." Mitchell nodded thoughtfully. "I've got some savings, not much, but enough to buy some time, and I know cattle. If you're willing to take the risk, I believe we could make this work." Abigail studied him, this virtual stranger who was offering to invest his future in her failing ranch. "Why would you do this? You don't know me." "I know enough," he said simply. "I know you're brave and resourceful. I know you love this land, and I know what it's like to lose everything and have to fight to keep going." He paused. "Besides, where else am I going to find an employer who can handle a Winchester like you do?" The compliment brought a flush to her cheeks, but Abigail remained practical. "I need to think about it. This isn't a decision to make lightly." "Of course," Mitchell agreed. "I'll come back tomorrow if that's all right. We can talk more then." After he left, the house seemed emptier than before. Abigail spent the day going through her father's accounts, trying to make sense of their financial situation. The picture wasn't encouraging, but neither was it as dire as she had feared. With careful management and perhaps a bit of luck, the ranch could survive. The question was whether she wanted to fight that battle alone. When Mitchell returned the next day, he wasn't alone. He brought with him 2 other cowboys from the Double Cross, a seasoned ranch hand named Joseph Peterson, and a younger man called Thomas Reed. Both, like Mitchell, were facing unemployment with the impending sale of the Thompson Ranch. "I hope you don't mind," Mitchell said as they dismounted in her yard. "Joe here is the best wrangler in the territory, and Tom can break any horse you put him on." Abigail welcomed them cautiously. The men were respectful, removing their hats and expressing condolences for her father before Mitchell took them on a tour of the property. She watched from the porch as they examined the corral, the barn, the meager herd grazing in the distance. They spoke animatedly, pointing and gesturing, occasionally looking back toward the house. When they returned, Joe spoke first. "Miss Vance, I've been ranching in Montana for 15 years, and I've never seen land with more potential than what you've got here. Good water, good grass, and sheltered from the worst of the winter winds." "Potential doesn't pay bills," Abigail pointed out. "No, madam, it doesn't," Tom agreed. "But hard work and know-how might. If you'd have us, we'd be proud to help you realize what your father started here." Abigail looked at Mitchell, who had remained silent during this exchange. "Your idea," he nodded. "A ranch needs more than one pair of hands. Joe and Tom are the best, and they're willing to work for shares rather than wages to start, same as me. If we can build the herd back up, we all profit. If not," he shrugged, "well, we'd be out of work anyway with the Double Cross selling." It was a fair proposal, and Abigail found herself warming to the idea. These men knew ranching in ways she didn't, despite having grown up on this land. And the thought of facing the coming months with allies rather than alone was undeniably appealing. "I'll need references," she said finally, "and we'll need formal agreements." The men exchanged pleased glances. "Mr. Thompson will vouch for all of us," Joe assured her. "And we can ride into Whitefish to see the lawyer about those agreements whenever you're ready." The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity. True to their word, the men threw themselves into the work of the ranch with enthusiasm and skill. Fences were mended, the barn repaired, and a careful inventory of the cattle revealed that the herd, while diminished, was healthy. Mitchell proved to be not only a capable cowboy, but also a natural leader. He coordinated their efforts with an easy authority that the others respected. More surprisingly, he treated Abigail as a full partner in these decisions, valuing her knowledge of the land and her instincts about the business. With each passing day, Abigail found herself watching him more closely. The way his hands moved confidently over the leather of a saddle he was mending. The gentle way he spoke to nervous horses. The deep laugh that sometimes emerged when Tom told one of his outrageous stories around the evening fire. It was dangerous territory, she knew. Mitchell was her employee, not a suitor. And she was still raw from grief, perhaps vulnerable in ways she didn't fully understand. Yet she couldn't deny the warmth that spread through her when he smiled in her direction, or the way her heart quickened when their hands accidentally touched while passing tools. One evening, after Joe and Tom had retired to the bunkhouse they had renovated, Mitchell lingered on the porch where Abigail sat watching the stars. "We should talk about the drive," he said, settling into the chair beside her. "If we're going to get these cattle to market before winter, we need to start planning." "Is it worth it?" she asked. "The herd is so small." "Every cow counts," Mitchell replied, "and it will give us capital for breeding stock. Besides, I've been talking with some of the smaller ranchers nearby. Several would pay us to include their cattle in the drive, strength in numbers." Abigail considered this. "That makes sense, but who would go? We can't leave the ranch unattended for weeks." "Joe and I could handle it," Mitchell suggested. "Tom could stay here with you." The thought of Mitchell being gone for weeks sent an unexpected pang through her. "I could go instead of Joe," she offered. "I've been on drives before with my father." Mitchell looked surprised. "It's hard trail, Abigail, dangerous too." "I'm not afraid of hard work or danger," she reminded him. "And it's my herd, my responsibility." He studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Your father would be proud of that spirit." A smile tugged at his lips. "Though he might question your judgment in choosing to spend weeks on the trail with the likes of me." "My father trusted my judgment," Abigail replied, holding his gaze. "In all things." Something shifted in the air between them, a tension that had been building since that first night now acknowledged. Mitchell leaned slightly forward, then caught himself and stood abruptly. "We should get some rest," he said, his voice rougher than before. "Lots to do tomorrow." Abigail watched him walk toward the bunkhouse, his shoulders stiff in the moonlight. She remained on the porch long after he had disappeared, wondering if she had imagined that moment of connection, or if he too felt the pull between them but was fighting it for the sake of propriety or their business arrangement. The preparations for the cattle drive consumed the next few weeks. Supplies were purchased, routes planned, and agreements made with neighboring ranchers. As the departure date approached, Abigail found herself filled with both excitement and apprehension. She had told Mitchell the truth. She had accompanied her father on drives before, but always as the rancher's daughter, not as an equal partner responsible for the success of the venture. The night before they were to leave, disaster struck. Abigail was awakened by frantic shouting and the glow of flames visible through her window. She rushed outside to find the barn ablaze, Mitchell and the others already forming a bucket line from the well. "What happened?" she cried, joining them without hesitation. "Don't know," Tom panted as he passed her a bucket. "Woke up to the smell of smoke. They fought the fire desperately, but it was too late to save the structure." By dawn, all that remained were smoldering ruins and the exhausted, soot-covered figures of the 4 ranchers. "Thank God the horses were in the corral," Joe said, collapsing onto a stump, "and we got the tack out." Mitchell said nothing, his expression grim as he surveyed the damage. When the others had gone to clean up, he turned to Abigail. "This wasn't an accident," he said quietly. Abigail felt cold despite the lingering heat of the fire. "The Blackwater gang?" "Has to be," Mitchell confirmed. "No other explanation. They've been quiet these past weeks, but I should have known they wouldn't forget." "What do we do?" Mitchell's jaw tightened. "The drive can't wait." "Those cattle need to get to market before the snows, but I can't leave you here now, not with those men still out there holding a grudge." "Then I'll come with you as planned," Abigail insisted. "All of us will go, the house can be locked up. And give them free rein to burn it down too, no." Mitchell shook his head. "I'll stay. Joe can lead the drive with Tom. They know the trail as well as I do." "That's not the plan we agreed on," Abigail protested. Mitchell's eyes met hers, filled with a determination she hadn't seen before. "Plans change when circumstances do." "I'm not leaving you unprotected, Abigail. Not again." There was something in his voice, in the intensity of his gaze, that silenced her arguments. This wasn't just about the ranch or the cattle, it was about her safety, about his need to ensure it. "All right," she conceded. "But we rebuild the barn while they're gone. I won't let the Blackwater gang think they've won anything here." Mitchell's expression softened into something like admiration. "Deal." Joe and Tom departed with the herd 2 days later, joined by several hands from the neighboring ranches whose cattle were included in the drive. The yard seemed strangely empty without them and the constant lowing of the cattle. Abigail and Mitchell fell into a new routine. During the day, they worked side by side clearing the burned remains of the barn and beginning construction on a new one. At night, they took turns keeping watch, though Mitchell often insisted on taking the longer shifts, allowing Abigail more rest. One evening, about a week after the others had left, they sat together on the porch after a day of particularly hard work. Abigail had noticed Mitchell favoring his right arm and insisted on examining it, discovering an angry burn he had hidden from her. "You should have said something," she scolded gently, applying salve to the reddened skin. "This could have become infected." "It's nothing," he shrugged, though he couldn't quite hide his wince as she wrapped a clean bandage around his forearm. "It's not nothing," she insisted. "We rely on each other here. That means being honest about injuries or problems." Mitchell watched her work, his expression unreadable in the fading light. "Is that what we're doing, Abigail, relying on each other?" She secured the bandage and looked up, suddenly aware of how close they were sitting, of the warmth of his skin beneath her fingers. "Isn't it?" "I think it might be more than that," he said quietly. "At least for me." The admission hung between them, honest and vulnerable. Abigail felt her heart race, the feelings she had been carefully containing now threatening to overflow. "Mitchell," the crack of a rifle shot cut through the twilight, sending both of them diving for cover. A bullet splintered the porch post where Mitchell's head had been moments before. Inside. He shouted, pushing Abigail toward the door while drawing his revolver. They scrambled into the house, Mitchell slamming and bolting the door behind them. "Zachariah," a voice called from the darkness. "Come on out and face me like a man. You and me got unfinished business." Mitchell peered carefully through a window. "Jensen," he muttered, "the leader of the Blackwater gang, he's alone from what I can see." "That doesn't make sense," Abigail whispered, retrieving her rifle from its place by the door. "Why would he come alone?" "Ego," Mitchell answered grimly. "Or the others are dead or captured. Either way, he's dangerous, maybe more so if he's desperate." Outside, Jensen continued his taunts. "Too scared to face me, Zachariah, hiding behind a woman's skirts. Come on out, or I start shooting up that nice new barn frame you've been working so hard on." Mitchell's hand tightened on his revolver. "I need to end this." "No," Abigail grabbed his arm. "That's exactly what he wants. He's trying to draw you out." "As long as he's out there, you're in danger," Mitchell insisted. "I won't have that." The determination in his eyes told Abigail arguing would be futile. Instead, she said, "Then we face him together. 2 guns are better than 1. Mitchell started to protest, then saw the resolve in her expression and nodded reluctantly. "Stay behind me. If something happens to me, you run for the creek bed, get to the neighbors, promise me." "Nothing's going to happen to you," she said firmly. They positioned themselves carefully, Mitchell at the front door, Abigail at the window to the side where she would have a clear shot if needed. "Jensen." Mitchell called out, "I'm coming out, but you should know the sheriff in Whitefish has your description. Killing me won't change that. Your days of terrorizing this territory are numbered." "Let me worry about the law," Jensen shouted back. "You just worry about dying quick or slow." Mitchell looked at Abigail one last time, something unspoken passing between them. Then he threw open the door and stepped onto the porch, his revolver held steady. In the fading light, Abigail could see Jensen standing near the half-built barn frame, his rifle aimed directly at Mitchell. The outlaw was a large man with a bushy beard and cold eyes, his clothes dirty and worn. "There he is," Jensen sneered. "The hero of the hour. Tell me, Zachariah, is the Vance girl worth dying for, or are you just stupid?" "Put down the rifle, Jensen," Mitchell said calmly. "You're outnumbered and outmatched," Jensen laughed. "Outnumbered? I only see one man fool enough to stand in the open." "That's because you're not looking carefully enough," Mitchell replied. As if on cue, Abigail shifted slightly at the window, making her presence known. Jensen's eyes widened momentarily, then narrowed in calculation. "The girl," he said. "Well, ain't that sweet? 2 for the price of 1. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Jensen swung his rifle toward the window where Abigail stood. Mitchell fired, his shot striking the outlaw in the shoulder. Jensen staggered but didn't fall, returning fire wildly. Mitchell dove to the side as Abigail squeezed the trigger of her Winchester, her bullet finding its mark in Jensen's chest. The outlaw looked down at the spreading red stain in disbelief, then crumpled to the ground. For a moment, neither Mitchell nor Abigail moved, the echo of gunfire still ringing in their ears. Then Mitchell was rushing to where Jensen lay, kicking the fallen rifle away and checking for signs of life. "He's dead," he confirmed, his voice hollow. Abigail lowered her rifle, a strange numbness washing over her. She had never killed a man before. The necessity of it, the justice even, did nothing to ease the weight of that knowledge. Mitchell seemed to understand without words. He came to her, gently taking the rifle from her hands and setting it aside before drawing her into his arms. She went willingly, burying her face against his chest, taking comfort in the steady beat of his heart. "You saved my life," he murmured into her hair. "He would have killed us both." "I know," she whispered. I never thought." "I know," he echoed, holding her tighter. "I know." They stood like that for a long while, the connection between them deepening in the aftermath of danger. When Abigail finally pulled back slightly, Mitchell's hands came up to frame her face, his eyes searching hers. "When I thought he might hurt you," he said softly, "nothing else mattered. Nothing but keeping you safe." The naked emotion in his voice broke through the last of Abigail's carefully constructed walls. "Mitchell," he leaned down slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. Instead, she rose to meet him, their lips coming together in a kiss that spoke of relief and longing and possibilities neither had dared voice before. When they parted, both slightly breathless, Mitchell rested his forehead against hers. "I've wanted to do that since that first night," he admitted. "When you opened your door to a stranger with trouble on his heels." "I've wanted you to," Abigail confessed, "but the ranch, our arrangement." "Hang the arrangement," Mitchell said with feeling. "I didn't stay for the ranch, Abigail, I stayed for you. Everything else was just an excuse to remain close to you." The naked honesty of his words warmed her from within, but reality intruded. Jensen's body still lay in their yard, a grim reminder of the danger that had found them. "We need to deal with this," she said reluctantly. Mitchell nodded, reluctantly releasing her. "I'll ride for the sheriff at first light. For tonight, we'll have to handle things as best we can." They worked together in the darkness, wrapping Jensen's body and moving it to the old root cellar where the cool earth would preserve it until the authorities could arrive. Neither spoke much, the gravity of death, even that of an outlaw who had meant them harm, weighing heavily. When the grim task was complete, they returned to the house. Abigail built up the fire while Mitchell cleaned his revolver at the table. The domesticity of the scene struck her suddenly, how natural it felt to share this space, this life with him. "Mitchell," she said, settling beside him at the table. "What happens now, with us, I mean?" He set the revolver aside, taking her hands in his. "What do you want to happen?" "I want you to stay," she said simply. "Not as a hired hand, not as a business partner, just stay with me." The smile that spread across his face was like the sunrise breaking over the mountains. "There's nothing I want more in this world," he assured her. "But I need you to be certain. Your father's only been gone a few months. People will talk." "Let them," Abigail said with newfound conviction. "My father would have wanted me to be happy, to have someone to share this life with, someone brave and kind and honest." She squeezed his hands. "Someone like you." Mitchell brought her hands to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. "Then I'm yours, Abigail Vance. For as long as you'll have me." "That might be a very long time," she warned, her eyes bright with unshed tears of happiness. "I'm counting on it," he replied. The sheriff arrived 2 days later, accompanied by a deputy and, surprisingly, Joe and Tom. The cattle drive had encountered the lawmen on the trail, where they were tracking the remnants of the Blackwater gang. Learning of the threat to the Vance ranch, Joe and Tom had turned the herd over to the other drovers and ridden back with the sheriff. Jensen's body was properly dealt with, his death ruled justifiable self-defense. The sheriff informed them that the other members of the gang had been captured trying to rob a bank in Helena. With their leader dead and the others facing prison, the threat to the ranch was finally over. "You two look different," Joe observed that evening as they all sat around the fire, celebrating their reunion and the good news. "Something happened while we were gone, besides the obvious, I mean." Mitchell and Abigail exchanged a glance, a private smile passing between them. "You might say that," Mitchell acknowledged. "I've asked Abigail to marry me." Tom nearly choked on his coffee. "Well, that was fast work, boss." "And," Joe prompted, looking at Abigail expectantly. "I said yes," she confirmed, unable to keep the happiness from her voice. "Life's too uncertain to wait when you know what you want. Ain't that the truth?" Joe agreed, raising his cup in a toast. "To the future Mr. and Mrs. Zachariah, may your herd be healthy and your children numerous." The weeks that followed were filled with hard work and planning for the ranch, for the wedding, for the future they would build together. The new barn rose steadily, stronger and larger than the one that had burned. News of their engagement spread through the community, bringing visits from neighbors offering congratulations and, often, practical gifts for the ranch. The wedding took place on a crisp October day, with the mountains wearing their first dusting of snow like sugar on a cake. The ceremony was held in the newly completed barn, decorated with wildflowers and ribbons by the women of the neighboring ranches. The local minister officiated, his words about partnership and perseverance particularly fitting for a couple who had found each other through danger and grief. Abigail wore her mother's wedding dress, carefully altered and adorned with fresh lace sent by Mitchell's aunt in Texas. Mitchell stood tall and proud in a new suit, his usually tanned face clean-shaven and slightly pale with nerves until the moment Abigail appeared at the barn doors. The love that transformed his expression then left no doubt in anyone's mind about the depth of his feelings. "I take you, Abigail Vance, to be my wife," he vowed, his voice clear and steady. "To share in your joys and sorrows, to work beside you in plenty and in want, to keep watch with you through all the nights and greet each new day together for as long as we both shall live." Abigail, her heart full to bursting, responded in kind. "I take you, Mitchell Zachariah, to be my husband. To stand with you against whatever comes, to build our dreams on this land, to find in you my shelter and my home through all the days and nights that lie ahead." Their first kiss as husband and wife was met with cheers and a few good-natured whistles from the cowboys in attendance. The celebration continued well into the evening, with dancing and feasting and stories shared around bonfires in the yard. When the last guests had departed, Mitchell swept Abigail into his arms at the threshold of what was now their home. "Mrs. Zachariah," he said, his eyes dancing with joy and promise. "Welcome home." "I've been home since the moment you said you'd keep watch till morning," she replied, cupping his face in her hands. "Everything since then has just been finding our way back to that truth." The years that followed brought challenges, as all years do on a frontier ranch. Harsh winters, dry summers, fluctuating cattle prices, but they also brought joy in abundant measure. The herd grew, the ranch prospered under their combined care and the continued loyal work of Joe and Tom. In the spring of 1880, their first child was born, a daughter they named Eleanor, after Abigail's mother. She was followed 2 years later by a son, Henry, named for the grandfather he would never meet but whose legacy lived on in the thriving ranch. On the 5th anniversary of their wedding, Mitchell surprised Abigail with a new porch swing, crafted by his own hands during stolen moments over several months. "For watching sunsets," he explained as they settled into it that evening, their children already asleep inside. "And for growing old together." Abigail leaned against his shoulder, contentment washing over her as she looked out at the land they had nurtured together. "Do you ever think about that first night, when you showed up bleeding at my door?" Mitchell's arm tightened around her. "Only every day," he admitted. "Best bullet graze I ever had," she laughed softly. "I couldn't sleep after my father's funeral. I thought I'd never find peace again. And I said I'd keep watch till morning," Mitchell remembered. "Little did I know I was volunteering for a lifetime position." "Any regrets?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. Mitchell tilted her face up to his, kissing her with the same tenderness as on their wedding day. "Not a single one," he assured her. "Every watch, every morning, every moment with you has been a gift I never thought to deserve." As the sun dipped below the Montana mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple, Abigail Zachariah knew with absolute certainty that whatever challenges tomorrow might bring, they would face them together just as they had every dawn since that first fateful night when a wounded cowboy had promised to keep watch until morning, and had instead stayed to guard her heart for a lifetime.